I'd like to call to order the work session on the date September 20th, 2021. We are all here, and Brannon is on the line. Brannon, are you there? Brannon? Well, let's be listening and we'll announce when. Oh, was that him? Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for coming in tonight online. I know it's difficult. So, all right, we have two items on the agenda. We have two items on the agenda tonight, and of course, I'm going to remind council once more that staff will be pausing intermittently to answer any questions. I'd like to start out with our city manager, Julie Baines, and for the introduction. Julie?
Thank you, Mayor. For our first work session this evening, as we know, homelessness is an increasing problem in the Valley and nationally. And Goodyear is working collaboratively with our regional partners to determine how best to respond to the needs of those experiencing homelessness. Tonight, we have presentations from Amy St. Peter, she's the MAG Deputy Executive Director. We have our HOT team, Lieutenant Ward and Officer Middebauer. And then we have from our legal department, Lisa Maximolins. And so with that, we're going to start with our Goodyear HOT team, and I'd like to turn it over to Lieutenant Ward.
Hi, good evening. I'm Lieutenant Ward. I am currently in charge of the Goodyear HOT team, which right now consists of Officer Middebauer, and he has been doing most of the work there for the past year. So I'd like to introduce Officer Middebauer, and he'll take it from here.
Good evening, I'm Officer Middebauer. As Lieutenant Ward said, I'm with the Goodyear HOT team. I've been part of homeless outreach here in Goodyear since August of last year. So we have a small presentation that we're gonna go through today. So the Goodyear Police Department's homeless outreach team was formed in September of 2018. There was some concern for the number of homeless individuals that were being seen by the public in Goodyear, and so we were formed to try to get them help, to make contact with them, to get them to the resources. It consists of a sergeant and an officer. We work with the homeless individuals as well as all members of the community, private citizens, guests, and business owners. We conduct welfare checks. We help connect all the individuals to resources. We enforce statute and city ordinances, and we also deal with the mental health and crisis intervention aspect that anyone may face. So a big question, why a homeless outreach team with the police department? Generally speaking, PD is usually the first point of contact that the homeless individuals may come into contact with, whether it's through our normal day-to-day patrols, whether it's responding to calls or concerns from different citizens in the community. We ensure the community-oriented assistance and resources, not necessarily the displacement of the individuals. We try not to criminalize homelessness. That goes against the idea of why we were formed. We do enforce laws when needed, but the first and foremost idea is resources and help. We act as an additional resource for patrol. We help management of incidents related to homeless persons and or behavioral health. We act as liaisons between patrol and the homeless, and we are the entry point for them to get the resources that they need. So our approach is we have the homeless outreach team, which, as I said, it's actually two parts. It's homeless outreach as well as crisis intervention. We partner with Phoenix Rescue Mission. We go out with them once a week for several hours on Wednesday. We do outreach with them. We try to get people the resources through them because they have much more resources than we do. We put up recently some no trespassing signage, and we also work and maintain the trespass letter program, which businesses will have a trespass authorization completed. So if anyone really is on their private property after business hours or not conducting legitimate business there during business hours, we have their permission to have them trespass from the property. Finally, we focus on working with all members of the community. We enforce action when it's appropriate, but we spend a lot of time building relationships with all members of the community, including citizens, homeless individuals, and businesses. And the one thing that we always try to make people aware of is our purpose here is not to criminalize homelessness. We have been working on putting these signs up. It basically allows anyone who wants to give and wants to help people out, rather than giving them additional resources, rather than just giving money to the panhandlers. We have a list on our website of different organizations that we utilize and how they can give to those organizations. We initially started with 4 signs on Litchfield and Estrella as you head towards the freeway. We have since expanded it to 8 signs to include Bullard Avenue, as well as the signs at the entrances to the park and ride. We're working on expanding that up to 15 signs to also include private businesses where there's been an uptick in panhandling activity. Some of the resources we provide is we have partnerships with the private citizens, with our local businesses. We work a lot with local nonprofit and faith-based organizations like the Phoenix Rescue Mission. We work with several other departments within the city. We are constantly in contact with code enforcement. We work with outside agencies in other cities. I personally have worked a lot with Peoria's homeless outreach program. Ours was based on theirs. So we do a lot of work within the 2 communities together. We have a lot of medical and mental health organizations that we use, such as the Phoenix Rescue Mission, A New Leaf, Agua Fria Food and Clothing Bank, Community Bridges, Recovery Innovations, First Care, Angels on Patrol, and Southwest Network. And this is just some pictures as to why we do what we do. The main idea for us to be out there is to help people, not to arrest them, take them to jail, even though that may be the outcome in some circumstances. First and foremost, it's about outreach and help.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Lisa Mullins, Assistant City Attorney with the City Attorney's Office.
Sure, you're talking to the microphone, please. Thank you.
Lisa Mullins, Assistant City Attorney with the City Attorney's Office, and I'm here tonight to provide a brief overview of a federal appellate court decision that impacts the city's ability to enact ordinances specifically relating to homeless persons. The Martin versus City of Boise case was decided in 2018. In that case, the court noted that and prohibited city ordinances that specifically criminalize what the court called basic human functions, sleeping, sitting, or lying outside on public property. Specifically, the court noted that a city cannot criminalize this behavior when there are no alternative shelter beds available. The court went on to say that criminalizing this type of behavior violates the 8th Amendment of the United States Constitution and is considered a cruel and unusual punishment. So specifically in the City of Boise case, the city had enacted 2 ordinances, and those ordinances were reviewed by the court. Under the first ordinance, a person could be criminally cited for sleeping outside without the permission of the specific landowner. The second ordinance, under that ordinance, a person could be criminalized for camping in public places. So what the court noted and specifically honed in on was involuntary status. The court noted that most people generally in this situation would prefer to be in a shelter, in a bed, and not outside sleeping. The court said that this was an involuntary status and it shouldn't be criminalized. So this case was appealed up to the United States Supreme Court or submitted to the court for review. In 2019, the United States Supreme Court rejected that review. So what that means is the City of Boise case is the law of the land here in Arizona, and it impacts the city's abilities to enact ordinances that, again, specifically criminalize those basic human functions.
So with that, Mayor, that concludes the presentation update from the HOT team and the legal review. So before we transition over to the regional conversation with Amy St. Peter, it would be a good opportunity for any council comments or questions on the city's current activities.
So just to be sure I've heard that correctly, the council can now speak. Is that correct?
On those 2 pieces of the presentation,
Yes.
correct.
Okay. Joe?
Lisa, if you have a place for them to go and they refuse, what happens then?
So under the law, under the Boise case, if there's a place where they can go, and I think we have to be specific because the Boise case, there were certain places where beds were available, but the shelter had certain requirements before a person could actually enter into the program. And if you have an encampment ordinance in that situation, yes, there could be a criminal citation if those beds are available within the jurisdiction.
Okay, but you'd have to have some type of facility for them to go to.
You need to have a place for them to go to, and there's no specific requirements for them to enter into that facility.
Okay.
And the beds have to be available.
Thank you.
Sharon?
I appreciate this, and I appreciate the fact that we're doing that program. I work a lot with the city of Peoria's program in their court, and it seems to be very successful in keeping people either out of the court system and hopefully get a lot of mental health and a lot of drug issues. So my question is, what are our numbers? What are our current counts, and have they gone up with regard to after COVID? And has that impacted?
Our most recent count has actually gone down. The census count we did in 2020, I believe we counted 23 homeless individuals. The most recent one, which we did in, I believe it was March of 21, we had 12.
Okay.
Now, the only thing that I can't speak to is I don't have any numbers as to how COVID has affected that. I know the count we did this year happened right after a very large storm system passed through. So, I mean, there's many things that can affect that. So I don't know 100% what drove those numbers in what direction.
And then the other question I think I have for is a more legal question. We talk about, obviously under Boise, we can't criminalize the actual act of being homeless or camping. But then you also have kind of the flip side where you may have people who are acting aggressive and to other residents, other people, the aggressive panhandling. How can what can we pass or what can we do? Is it using the hot team? How do we make sure that, you know, our citizens in general feel safe? I know this often a problem around bus stops where people will set up encampments if you can't, because they're sheltered in many cases. What's a way that we can do to keep our citizens safe, make sure that we get people services?
Well, Mayor and Council, specifically if people are breaking the law, disorderly conduct was, I think, an example that you utilize. If people are breaking the law, our goal is, in my understanding, is that the HALT team will go out and enforce specific provisions on the books if they are engaging in criminal activity. And I'll defer to the HALT team to further address that.
That's 100% true. Generally, we don't have a whole lot of criminal activity from a lot of the individuals we currently have in the city, but we do monitor. When we have panhandlers on the off-ramps, I'll sit there and I'll monitor them for a while to see, okay, are they walking up the off-ramps? Are they going into the state land where we're going to trespass them from? If we have legitimate charges that we can bring against them, we will. If it's something that we can handle with resources or just getting them to a place where they need to go, we'll do it that route.
So it's services first, and then if you can't help with the services, then you'll move like to the upper step.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Laura?
It seems over time you've cultivated a lot of resources, which is really good. Are there other resources that you need, or I know that we have funded some of those through our community funding, but what else do you need? What other resources would be beneficial?
As of right now, we haven't really seen any kind of vacancy of resources. We've been doing a lot of work with Phoenix Rescue Mission, and I know myself personally, we've had some enormous help from Angels on Patrol the last 2 months, from everything from getting people who were looking for a hotel stay while they started on the new job. We had a couple individuals that were in Goodyear but trying to get to California, where they had a job works program, where they had family to get to, and Angels on Patrol helped us with bus fares for that. So they've been a huge, huge help in that area. Yep. Offhand, I can't really say any resources that we're lacking as of right now.
Okay.
Transportation is always a big thing.
to help people to get to where they need to go.
Yes, because unfortunately, most of the resources that we're getting people to are in Phoenix. And I mean, if I'm working, I'll be more than happy to give them a ride down there. But when I'm not working, if we could get something in the works for transportation for them, I think that would be a big help. And that is one thing that I know a lot of these individuals have told me that they're reluctant to take up the resources is getting back and forth, because they may have a doctor out in Goodyear that they see, but all their shelter resources are in Phoenix, and it's that distance and traveling back and forth that makes it hard for them.
What role does code enforcement play in assisting you?
So there's certain areas in Goodyear that are county areas, or the county controls those areas, that they have basically tasked code enforcement with keeping up on, as far as campsites, as far as keeping clean. So when we get a call like something like that, a lot of times it'll be code enforcement calling me directly and saying, this is what I found in this area. And we try to work with them to find out, okay, well, who's the actual landowner? Is this something that we need to trespass them on? Is this something we can just talk to them and find out what's the best route? So it's really a joint venture with code on certain areas depending on the land.
Okay. Well, I'm very appreciative of the work you do. I know that Mary was one of the pioneers of the initial program, and I think it's been very successful. And please let it be known when you need things to help you serve.
Thank you.
Bill?
Thanks, Mayor. So I've just got a couple of kind of generic questions, and I'll start with Lisa first. When you talk about a facility being available, and I thought I heard you say it locally, does that mean county, in our county, or does that mean locally?
The interpretation has been that within the jurisdiction.
Begin the microphones.
The interpretation has been that it is within the jurisdiction, so within the city.
So it has to be within the city. So even if Phoenix builds a 1 million square foot homeless facility, that doesn't help us.
That's the interpretation. It hasn't been tested, but that's the interpretation.
Okay. And then the other question that I have for the police officers is, when we talk about trespassing somebody, for those that are listening, what does that mean?
So when someone is officially trespassed, is they have to be basically told that the property owner, the landowner, does not want them on their property and they need to leave. We do that in the form of a trespass notice. It's a piece of paper we fill out, has their personal information, the information of the person who wants them trespassed from the property. That individual gets a copy. A copy stays at the PD in our records department, and a copy goes to that business owner. Once they are officially trespassed, if they return at any time within that year, and we get called out there, or we just see them on a property we know they've been trespassed from, they will be arrested.
How frequently does that happen?
To be quite honest, not very. Most of the ones I've had contact with, as soon as they've gotten that notice of trespass, they haven't come back. There's been a few here and there that they do return, but the vast majority of them will stay away from that property.
And it's that specific property. So if I'm trespassing in the basins, and you trespass me off, and I move to Target, or I move down the road to McLean's, the whole process starts all over again.
Well, now it really depends too, because for instance, when I find someone in one of the basins, I'll write the trespass notice to read that they are trespassed from all retention basins in the city of Goodyear. As long as it's a city of Goodyear property, they're trespassed from it. Same thing applies to when they walk up on the rocky embankments of the off-ramps. I trespass them from all the off-ramps of the I-10. When it comes to individuals or the individual businesses or the private property owners, then yes, they'll generally be trespassed, say, from one Circle K, not from all Circle Ks.
Okay. So, and I think that helps bring some, clarity and understanding for anyone who's kind of paying attention to this, and how does the process work. I'm excited about the regional approach that we need to take, which we're going to hear about in a little bit. I think for us that becomes the greater solution as we move forward. We're fortunate that we don't have a big homeless population, but that doesn't mean that we won't, or that if we're behind in the game, that they won't be relocated to our community. So I think the problem going forward is more regional than it is local. On that local note, I do want to share, as I have an opportunity to interface with Christine McMurdy, obviously very often in our transit discussions, and she is constantly glowing about the work that the HOT team has done at the Park and Ride off of Dysart for us, that the response and the kindness that you show to the folks that are there has really been very noticeable. That vandalism is down, and instances of homeless camps on that piece of federally funded property is way down, and she is constantly talking about that. And I think that it's important for our transiting public that they feel safe going to those types of places. So it's not just the private stops, and even folks in the community are I think everyone wants to help. No one knows how. And rather than turning this into a here's your ticket, here's where the courthouse is, and make this a revolving to move them through and get these folks the help that they need. And then for the folks that want to make this a lifestyle, then we've got to keep them within their rights, but not infringing on those of others. So I really appreciate the efforts that you guys have done. Thank you.
Wally?
Well, I've got a question for Lisa, and I've got several questions for the HOT team. Lisa, I was not aware that the city was trying to pass some criminalization ordinances against the homeless people. Can you refresh my memory? Have we been doing that? I didn't think we've ever done that.
Mayor, Council, no, and I don't think I didn't mean to convey that message. I'm just giving a brief overview of the current law applying to the city of Goodyear.
Yeah, well, you told us so long. I didn't think, but I thought perhaps you were implying that we might have been thinking about having the criminalization.
No.
Ordinances, and I have not had any conversations in that regard. Now, for the HOT team, explain to me, what do you do with Peoria every other week or every month, or what is this?
So when I see Peoria the most is when we run our crisis intervention schools for the officers. Usually we'll talk to them if we have an issue rising up. We will talk to them to find out, okay, did you have the same issue? How did you go about handling it? Just to kind of run things off, kind of like a sounding board to see if we're doing what the standard is and how we can improve that. It's the Phoenix Rescue Mission that we go out with once every week
For
on
12
Wednesdays.
people.
I'm sorry?
For 12 people, and it's the same people you're seeing every week.
Sometimes it's the same people. Sometimes we get that influx where someone might come from Phoenix for the day. But every Wednesday from 12 to 3, I'll go out with Rich Heights, who's the representative for Phoenix that comes out here. And we just try to make contact with people to see if the ones that we find that day, we can provide resources with, if they need something, if they need to find get their IDs renewed, something like that.
Okay, and you're staying within the confine, the boundaries of our city only?
Yes.
Right. So how do you work with a New Leaf, and I work for your food bank? I understand community bridges. I don't understand recovery innovations.
Wally,
Care
talking
First.
to the microphone.
Care
please.
First is in Avondale. So
So
and
recovery
I understand Angels on
innovations.
Patrol and Southwest Network, I'm not sure.
So these are ones that we've worked with in the past. I haven't worked with Southwest recently. These are all ones that we've worked with since the beginning of the unit up until current times.
Do they call you and say, I have a homeless person, come get them? I mean, how
No.
does this work?
What we will do is we will actually call them for beds. Recovery
beds.
innovations.
For
yes,
beds?
For
Okay,
beds, like
sorry.
in their shelters.
Okay,
Recovery innovations is strictly for people that we contact with mental illness who are in crisis, that need that emergency crisis help. That's the only time we will really use recovery innovations.
okay,
So that's very specific.
okay. What about Cares First? How does that work?
Cares First is one of the organizations that I've contacted when I've been out with Phoenix Rescue Mission, and we found a father with 2 kids that needed to find emergency shelter. So we contacted Care First to see, do you have any resources that we can use for a single dad with kids? Because there's not a lot out there for that group.
Okay.
Unfortunately, at the time, Care First did have a program that we could get him into, but
They don't.
he
know.
refused it because he just didn't. It gave us an excuse of, I'll do it, but not right now.
Yeah, okay.
Mm.
Okay, and my other question is, you said that you go into the county areas and it's a code enforcement. Do we get reimbursed for the county taking care of that for them or what?
I do not know. I know the one specific area that I know of on the Bullard Wash south of McDowell.
Right.
That
mhm.
is controlled by one of the departments of the county, and I know that code has an arrangement with them that they basically keep eyes on it, and I don't know exactly what that arrangement is with them though.
Just wondering if we could get some help if that's where you're having
Wally,
the.
you bring
I'm
that
wondering if,
microphone up.
they have the encampments there, if there's some way that we can get some help from the county for that.
Well, on that note, there is one individual that stays in that area. His name is Gilbert, and just so you know, the process of getting someone who's experiencing homelessness who wants to go into a housing program is usually a 1 to 2 month process just to get them started. With Gilbert, Phoenix Rescue Mission was able to get him into that process in a matter of hours. So as of right now, he's actually on a list to get into some kind of residential house. So I think right now, last I checked, he was the only one down there. Like I said, unfortunately, because they are transient in nature where they'll move from camp
Yeah.
to camp. It's just something we kind of have to keep on top of.
So basically you're out every day looking for homeless people.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. Can we get updates on the count every now and then instead of waiting from census to census? I mean, if the count goes up more than, say, 15 or 20, we need to know that. I don't want you to come back to us and say, well, we found 78 out here, because there may be other things we can do. 12 we're good with, because I can remember when it was 1
Yeah,
or 2.
I can make sure that
That'd be
those
great.
numbers get
Just
you.
give us some updates. Good, thank you.
Brandon?
Yeah, I had a question on trespassing, just to piggyback on someone else's comment. So if they're living in their car, I know they're probably a harder population is that considered camping or trespassing in a sleeping
We
in
would
a
treat
car,
it-
but in
We would treat it the same as trespassing, whether they are in their car. A lot of times they'll park behind a business, and if it's a business that we have a trespass notice on, whether they're out on the street sleeping in the parking lot or in their car, we will trespass them from that property.
okay. And then you said there's 12 right now, roughly. I mean, do these 12, do they want to be in Goodyear? I mean, I know there's not many resources, what we've kind of already talked about here. I mean, it seems like a lot of them want to keep moving to where resources might be, but I'm not sure about those 12. I know you have a lot more probably one-on-one interaction with them, but do you see that they usually want to keep moving, or are they just here for a short amount of time, or do they just they like being here?
Well, the number of the 12 was only from the census that we did back in January. Between day to day, that number could go up, the number could go down, depending what we're finding. The ones I've talked to, they are pretty set on staying in Goodyear because they like the community. We have gotten people out of Goodyear because finally they do realize that if they do want to get back on their feet and have a job, that they need to go where the resources are, which for the most part is Phoenix. It takes a while though. I mean, sometimes you may have to offer services dozens of times before they finally take you up on it. So it is a slow process.
And Phoenix Rescue, is that just for guys, or is that, I'm talking about for housing specifically? I'm aware of someone who is homeless now, who has 2 kids, but they're, is that just for men, Phoenix Rescue? I guess for housing, they want to. This person wants to get housing, but having a hard time getting it. So I didn't know if the Phoenix Rescue is one of the sources, or if it's something, or if that was just for men for some reason. I might mixed up on what Phoenix does versus another nonprofit.
Well, a Phoenix Rescue Mission, they have a men's shelter and a women's shelter. Women with children can stay, 14 and under can stay at the women's shelter, but the men have to be separate, and that's for safety reasons, among other things. But the other thing that Phoenix Rescue can do for people who want housing, like say a family doesn't want to be split up, which we have run into quite a bit, they have just access to all the other resources that we don't have, so they can help get someone into permanent supported housing or find a solution that works for them. It doesn't necessarily have to be within their shelter, but they will actually help get into other programs or housing. And that's why they're such a great resource for us.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. That's what I had. So question-wise, so thank you for what you guys are doing. I know I've called you guys in the past, so I appreciate that you guys are out there helping out those that find themselves homeless.
Thank you, Brandon. Well, it's back to the mayor now, the last to speak. First of all, I want to thank you. When I came to council that day, and I had been that weekend over at Target and saw all of those, I was so upset. And the direction you're taking is exactly what we need in Goodyear. You're doing one by one. And you know, when you're on the street for a long time, you don't know if you want to do it when you first approach them. They have to know what you offer. And then they have to look at other people that are getting it and they're not. You got to give them incentive to want to do what they want to do, you know, and make changes. So I'm very pleased. And if we need an installation, or we need a truck, or we need a car, it is worth it, in my view, that we produce or let you have what you need, because it's being successful. It's not everybody, we know that. You just can't change them there. But what it is, it's sending a message. Don't plan on coming to Goodyear and living off of us, because if you don't help yourself, well, we're not going to help you. And I like that message. When we were first talking about this, and I think in the MAG presentation with the other mayors, I got a little panicky because I saw the numbers of homeless to us. And I thought, wow, so my last question is, how do we financially help Phoenix and how financially help those installations there that we have to use? So can you highlight that? Or we don't? Is that what you're saying, or we do?
If I could, Mayor, I think that's what Amy from MAG will be talking about.
Okay,
is that
she will.
regional
Okay,
conversation.
all right.
So,
All right.
so
I'm sorry I put that question out to you, but it's a thought I've had each time, and especially.
So, Mayor, almost every agency that they work with, our community fund, the money we give, goes to every single one of them, and we double check with how many residents.
I think that's reassuring for your mayor, because I've never dealt with this, but I want it reassuring for the public.
Yeah, but we
Because
do
it's the
support
public
these nonprofits, and we do it very well.
And so, I think that step by step, we're going the right direction.
Good.
All right, with that, I think that we'll transition to the regional part of this presentation. So,
I'm going to say once again, thank you, and I'm going to give you a round of applause.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm excited to be able to join with you and really excited to hear about all the fantastic work that's underway within the city of Goodyear. It really does take a community pulling together, and you're making resources available to help people where they are and to help them contribute again to the community in a really positive way. So thank you very much for your leadership in that space. I'm here tonight, number one, to listen. So I've really enjoyed the conversation so far, and I encourage you to please ask questions, to lend your voice to this conversation. I'm here to listen to your priorities, to your concerns, to your ideas, and to your questions. And I'm also here today to offer some information about these regional homelessness efforts. There's been a lot of work underway, particularly in the past year or so, so I'm excited to be able to share that with you tonight. And all of this work has been informed by you, by your staff coming to the meetings, by your elected officials coming to the various meetings at MAG as well. So thank you very much for your role in this and for your partnership. Moving forward then, we will be talking a little bit about what we're building and why we're doing that, and then really what are the next steps, and so how. Before I get into all of that, though, I would like to take a moment just to highlight how important it is to keep in mind that every community is different. Every community has different needs. Every community has different access to resources. Every community has different things that they would like to do in this space. And it's our role to support each community in entering into this conversation in a full and meaningful way. So my goal is to support you in supporting these regional homelessness efforts. And your feedback really helps us to be able to do just that. So in terms of what we're building, we are building an action plan right now. We had a strategy portfolio that was adopted back in May. And since then, we've been working very, very intently to detail out how can we put those strategies into action, and listening very intently to concerns, being able to respond to those concerns, and then make some adjustments because of that feedback. And in particular, we're very much looking at how do we catalyze, how do we support measurable progress? We need to be able to measure this, we need to be able to track it, and we need to be able to refine it so that we can enhance it as we move forward. We also need to make sure that people are able to receive help where they are, because people can stabilize more quickly that way, and the work that you're doing through your HOT team is helping people to do just that. So kudos to you for taking that very, very smart approach. All of this work is only possible because of our partners. This is a list of just some of the partners that we've worked with to date, but really you are one of our key partners. Our member agencies at MAG are helping us to build a regional plan based on local priorities, and that's critically important. We've worked with people from very different sectors, from the faith-based community to the business community to the nonprofit community, because they have deep expertise, and it really does take all of these partners working together to make this work successful. And the why. You know, I'll be sharing a set of slides now that demonstrate the need, but really we could answer that question just with this picture too. It's about helping people to be whole and healthy. It's about keeping families together and about helping people to contribute to their communities in a really positive way. So in terms of the need, and this has been touched on a little bit, for the past 4 years, we've seen increases in homelessness. We're not alone in that. We've seen that throughout the region, throughout the state, indeed throughout the entire country. What sets us apart, though, it's twofold. One, for the first time, and the last time that we did the count, it was the first time that the numbers of people living on the streets outnumbered those that we could accommodate in shelters. So that's very concerning. We simply aren't keeping pace with the growth that we're seeing among the homeless population. What also sets us apart, though, is we are outpacing everyone else in the country in terms of our percentage increases in homelessness. We have the highest percentage increases in homelessness in the entire country. And that's true for general homelessness as well as homelessness among single individuals. When we're looking at families, we're 5th highest in the country for percentage increases in homelessness. So we need to come together, and we have been doing that because of the leadership shown through our elected officials at MAG, and we're very excited to be able to partner with you to reverse this trend. Looking more locally then too, still, we're looking at evictions. And so the moratorium was just lifted. And we know that before that moratorium was put into place, we were deeply feeling the economic impacts of COVID-19. And so when that moratorium was put into place, it halted a lot of those. People were actually still being evicted, just not locked out. And so they still owe the money, and they could still be turned out really at a moment's notice, depending on the relationship that they have with the landlord and how the court proceedings move forward. And so we're intently looking at this data because this may increase the numbers of homelessness that we're already experiencing, and we're already higher than the rest of the country. Now, this is the good news, bad news. So if you're already in an apartment or you own your own home, this is great news, particularly if you're the landlord and you're renting to someone. It means that your property values are going up, which is great. It's bad news, though, for people who are just right on that cusp and about to lose their homes, and their income isn't keeping pace with the rent. And so this is one of the factors that is contributing to us having these big increases in homelessness. And so you'll see that across our planning area, that the number of rental units below $1,000 has dropped by about 60% over the past 10 years. In Goodyear, that's higher. That's about 80%. Again, it's great news for landlords and for property owners. It's tough news for people who are just right at that edge. We see this trend continue as well with sales transactions on homes. So when you look at the housing stock under $200,000, 10 years ago, it was in plentiful supply. Now, less so. And that's pricing some people out of the market, and it creates a barrier to people being stably housed. We've also asked people what contributes to their homelessness, and they give us a variety of different responses. And often it's not just one thing, it's multiple things. And so we hear about things like mental health, like substance use, eviction, people losing their job. There's a variety of different reasons, which is why we need a variety of different strategies and actions to get people housed again. We're also looking at how does this need manifest across the entire region, and we do see different elements of need in every community. And so when we look at different indicators for that, one of them is when people file for unemployment, particularly among low-wage workers. 30% of the jobs available to low-wage workers went away during COVID, during the pandemic. Not so much for the higher income. They actually saw job increases. So when people are filing for unemployment, there's an element of that throughout the entire region. We're also seeing elements of need when we look at who is calling 211 specifically for housing and homelessness assistance. So again, varying levels of need, but there is need throughout the entire region. And then we're also looking at vulnerable households. And so that includes when people are paying at least more than 30% of their income every month just on housing costs alone. That places them at greater risk for losing their home. Should they lose their job? Should they run into a major bill like medical bills, car repair bills? It puts them at risk. And so we do have a number of people who are paying more than 30%. We also have people who are paying more than 50% of their income every single month just on housing costs alone. It makes them vulnerable to homelessness. And so when we look at where are the services located, this is where they are right now, specifically in terms of shelter and housing for people experiencing homelessness. So you'll see that we do have elements of that throughout the region. They're concentrated, though, in parts of the region. And that can make it harder sometimes for people to stabilize if they're not living close or if they're not close to where those services are. So how are we doing this? We've been intently working on this just about since last October. We started really intensively in January with extensive outreach as well as research. We've continued that. We had the regional strategies move forward back in May. We've been intensively working on that action plan, which we'll have a draft of that available within this next month, and really do look forward to your feedback for you to let us know how can we strengthen this, and then being able to offer that for action in just a few months. This is the vision and mission that were created on the basis of working with you, with our partners, and really envisioning that every community is strong, safe, and healthy for every person in that community. All of this work has been deeply rooted in what's working really well right now in local communities. We've also conducted national research to make sure that our efforts are informed by the best of what's happening locally as well as nationally. We've conducted extensive outreach with more than 700 people, in particular with the faith community, the nonprofit community, the business community, and working with different stakeholders throughout the entire region. Also held an elected official forum earlier this year as well. And that was very helpful to hear from the leadership. Where would they like us to move in terms of these regional planning efforts? We also conducted surveys with your law enforcement, with your first responders, because we wanted to provide multiple opportunities for people to engage in this, and then we're able to take their feedback and use that to form and to shape those action steps. This work is deeply rooted in data. We've conducted extensive research. We're analyzing funding, and also, in particular, looking at what does it take for new homeless assistance programs to be successfully sited in communities? How can they support the community and lift up the community in a really positive way? In terms of the regional strategies then, they were organized into these 5 different categories that you see in front of you. These were informed by the extensive outreach as well as the research, and we continue to develop action steps across these different areas to identify how do we put all of this great work into action. The next steps then, we continue meeting with the Regional Homelessness Coordination Team. We just had another meeting today. Thank you again for sending your staff. At that meeting, we're looking in particular at those action steps. So great work that you already have in place, such as the community court that you recently approved back in July, the interdepartmental team that you're developing. These are really examples of best practices that are extremely effective and will help us in these regional efforts. And so we thank you for your leadership in that space. We hope to be able to lift up the work that you're doing to other communities as well, so others might follow suit. We'll continue to invite your feedback on those draft action steps and then to refine that plan and offer it for action later on this year. We do also have ongoing tools such as Hand Up. That is our homelessness assets and needs data for unified planning. And I can show that to you now. This is one of the screenshots. We have dozens and dozens, probably hundreds of records in there about services that are available right now. And this is used to help with the regional efforts as well as with the local efforts. There are also map layers, as you can see on the left, for different indicators of need. So where is the population in poverty? Where are the evictions taking place, for example? And so if you're looking to cite new homeless assistance programs, you know both where the need is as well as where the assets are. And when you click on any one of those icons, this is what you'll see. You'll see detailed information from 211, thanks to our friends from Solari. And this was developed by MAG, working very closely with them. And you'll find information about that service, and you can go directly to their website. That is my contact information. I know this is the first time that I'm presenting to you. I hope not the last, and I hope absolutely to continue the conversation with you with any feedback that you might want to offer this evening, as well as any feedback at all moving into the future.
Very well done. Thank you, Amy. Council, responses? Councilman Ortano.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I think one thing that we need to kind of work on as our city is homelessness isn't just one group. And I think sometimes people think of them just as one group. You have survivors of domestic violence who need some services we may have here. You have people who are drug addicted or alcohol abuse. You also have like families that may be technically not homeless, but they're homeless. They don't have a home. I've noticed the affordable housing, our housing market, it's no longer New York and Los Angeles where rents and houses are out of control. I mean, Goodyear, it's very, very expensive. Mm-hmm. And so I guess as part of the plan, and I may have more comments later, but as part of the plan, I'd like to see how we can keep services here. Yeah. Because I know there's some people that don't want to go to the big shelters because they are very large, they're very crowded, they have belongings. Right. What can we do to keep the people that want to stay here that may have family or friends or may have connections to this West Valley? What can we do in the West Valley? Not saying that we want to cut out, the other services. I know we support them through our community grants and everything and seeing what we can do to support them. But I know from talking to some of the clients that I work with that have homelessness, there's some that kind of develop their own little family network. They have their street name. It was really interesting. I talked to this one lady. They had their street names and they would take turns watching the belongings. So I tried to get her into a shelter. I said, well, there's the shelter because this was in downtown. She didn't want to go to the shelter because of the belongings or the pets so I guess that's one thing when you do the plan, my goal would be what can we do to keep people safe and in place in the community where the resources, bring resources to them, I guess. Mobile, I don't know how you do it. I don't know what the plan is, but thank you for your good work. And I really want to digest some of that data more. So thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Mayor and Council and Council Member. In terms of the heterogeneous nature of homelessness, you're exactly right. There are so many different reasons why somebody might experience homelessness. Sometimes they've struggled for years. Other times it's very brief, it's episodic, and then they're back on their feet again. You're already doing some of the really important work to help people stabilize very quickly, such as having the hot team, such as approving the community court, being able to work across different disciplines and different departments to create that holistic response to homelessness. That's critically important. We're seeing a lot of very good progress being made when folks are partnering with the nonprofit community, with the faith community as well. Those are important assets in this conversation, and it sounds like you're doing that work already, which is fantastic. And then our goal in this is to be able to offer more tools for the toolkit, to be able to help establish even more connections to help further the work within the city of Goodyear as part of this regional context. Thank you.
Bill?
Thank you, Amy. This was, just a tremendous amount of information. I can't agree more with, Sherry's comments and look at, I've said a number of times here that we need to do everything we can to prevent the next 100,000 people from becoming homeless, while at the same time taking care of the, 100,000 or a million that already are. And I think that becomes, kind of incumbent upon us. The comments that when Lisa read the court findings out of Boise, that's the first time I've actually heard the words that came out of there and talking about basic human rights to be able to sleep and sit. And I hope we never lose sight of that, as we go forward. So as I mentioned earlier, I think, this situation is a very regional issue. We can't rely on Phoenix to do everything, but we all need to move simultaneously, because if we open a shelter tomorrow, we are going to be the shelter. No one else is going to open one. So, kind of collectively getting that happening where, okay, on December 1st, 10 shelters are going to open. I think that helps move this, as opposed to, well, you go first and then I'll go, kind of an approach. But I think MAG is working in the right direction. And I think the comments earlier that it is a slow process. And I think we have to remember that. People just want to wish homelessness away. I just don't like to see it. And I relay to a number of our council folks that my son now lives in Los Angeles. And if you want to talk about homelessness, it is a dramatic difference. Climate's better, but you can tell the folks that immediately had been kicked out, different from the folks that have been on the streets for a while. And if that doesn't change your opinion of how we need to care for each other as human beings, I don't know what will. So keep up the good work, and thank you.
Thank you.
Brannon? Brannon? Laura?
Yeah, I don't have anything. Thank you very much.
Laura?
Well, Amy, you've done a great job. I've watched you through some of the forums and have heard you in various things, and you've taken a impossible task, and your team's done an amazing work. And I know it's not going to satisfy everybody, but it's a lot has gone into it. I think I was on one of the faith forums, and there's just thousands of different ideas and lots of enthusiasm. But I just really appreciate that regional support. There was a ton of federal money that came in for, evictions or for rental assistance and things like that. And from what I think I heard at the league conference, only about 11% of it's been used. Is it because, I mean, that's part of that prevention strategy, which is so critical to one of your pillars of success, I guess, is to prevent people from being evicted. So we've got this federal money that has come in, and it doesn't seem to get to the hands of people who need it. Do you have any insights on that?
I do, Council Member. Thank you so much for that question. We've made good progress in that space, which is fantastic because we're excited to receive the money, but even more excited to get it out into the community where it can do the most good. For example, I was speaking with one community today, actually in the West Valley, and she was saying, I think by the end of the month, if not within the next week, they will have spent down 100% of their first tranche of funds, and then they'll be moving on to their second tranche. So seeing very good progress in that space. It was difficult because at first communities were receiving the money, but no guidelines about how to spend it, and that really tied their hands. Also, just the sheer infrastructure that needed to be established. I've talked with some communities and they've turned every single inch of space into some kind of workspace because they've hired so many people to be able to move this money out into the community. It takes a while to responsibly staff up and to still be very good fiscal stewards of that money. But we are building up the infrastructure, and communities are doing a very good job of getting the money out into the community now. So I really just give communities so much credit because it's not often that you see having more money as a challenge. Usually the reverse is true. But it took some time to get that infrastructure in place. But it's in place now, and we're doing things very differently too because of the funding and because of the pandemic. And in some cases, we're doing things a lot better, and we'll continue those innovations moving into the future.
Great. Well, and I really appreciate seeing also your asset map. I think that's very telling of what is out there, because I think we only know of things anecdotally or what we hear, and to see that there is a pretty good network and what we can do to expand it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, Wally.
Thank you. Well, Amy, I've been working with you for a couple of years on this subject, so I've heard this presentation and it just gets better every time.
Thank you.
The thing that I really worry about, Amy, is that I really feel in my heart, I don't care what we do, we're not going to get rid of homeless.
Right.
And we can't have blinders on thinking we're going to solve this problem and that we can take care of everybody that's homeless, because we just can't do it. However, I feel what our city is doing, it's so personalized that we're really going out to just the homeless in our city and trying to help them. We can't make them take the services.
Right.
And I don't know how many times we have to contact them. I don't know if it's to our benefit to be out there every day talking to the same people or not, because so many of them have a different view than what we do. And it's something we have to take into consideration. But what I worry about is that if shelters open up, if these homeless people don't get job skills and jobs, it's not going to do any good. Right. They're not going to be productive citizens in our community. And that's what we basically want everyone to do. We want them to be able to have a home and have a job and have responsibilities and be a contributing member to our city. And what we can do to help them, we're willing to do it, but they also have to be willing to do it. And that's the hardest thing. The shelters I've visited, the people I've talked to, I just was never really convinced we were on the right track. And I don't know what the right track is. I really don't. Amy, we've talked about this thing for so long, and we've been so involved in it, and it's so personal. So I don't know what to tell you, but I appreciate you getting the information together and that you're talking to all of the communities. And I think, personally, I think each community needs to take care of their own community first and then do something else. If you can't take care of your own community, you're certainly not going to be able to take care of someone else's,
right,
if you don't have something that works. But thank you, and your staff are wonderful. I've just loved every minute working with all of you and all the homeless calls I've been on. I shouldn't say homeless calls, but all of the committee homeless committee calls we've been on every week for the last 19 months has been amazing. And I just appreciated working with all of your staff. And I thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you so much. It's been fantastic to be able to work with you and to be able to receive your direction and your guidance in this. And you know, I agree, sadly, we will not solve homelessness. We will not get to a point where no one is experiencing homelessness. We're working to address it, more effectively, more efficiently, and to show marked progress in that. For example, with the action plan that we're working on right now, we've done extensive data analysis among local current providers and data. And we're looking at what would it take to reduce homelessness even by 25%. And so we know the number of beds that we would need in order to achieve that goal. We're looking at the number of beds that are in development, and then we'll be able to identify the gap and the cost associated with that. So we're being realistic about this, and we'll never hit that 100%. I would love to, but it's just not realistic from my perspective. And so these efforts are not built on that premise.
I know. And one other comment, I do know that when we sent out information to our city residents that we had money for them for assistance, we got very little takers. We weren't able to spend all that money at that time. Maybe it's changed. I haven't had an update on it, but we advertised it and we wanted to help, but they didn't come and we couldn't help them.
It's hard asking for help.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the biggest barrier.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I have some other concerns. It's just to come upon us very difficult. We have a lot of apartments now and building more. And the comments I get from people about it brings bad people and it brings crime in. So if we're going to do anything, it has to be a big PR program where we explain to people why we're doing this. And so I think the public's attitude is questionable, all right? Although we have great organizations, and I think about the homeless youth, how everybody came to the table on that, but that was a different age and it was different reasons. So I don't think we can just work on all the things we're talking tonight until we get a buy-in. And if we decide to do something in our city, do a home, do whatever, we need a buy-in. And I understand that because, you know, a lot of people feel they worked real hard and they've gotten to this point, and why should anybody be able to do that and, you know, and not work and, you know, and so all those reasons. So I would think that we would have to come up with a solid program that would turn people into helping us and be a part of it. But at this point, I have a lot of questions on that. I mean, a lot of apprehension about that. But again, your statistics are wonderful. That's what MAG is all about. The mapping and all of that. Our cities throughout could not get along without MAG. And so I thank you very much for coming tonight and giving the rest of the council all the information you've given us at MAG meeting. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And one of the action steps is just that, is a public education campaign. We need to be partnering with the communities about this topic to engage them as partners in this work. And so we absolutely agree. And we are looking at developing a regional campaign to be able to spread that word and to be able to engage people as neighbors. So thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And safe trip home.
Yes, thank you.
Does anybody want a break before we go into this next one? Are you all right? Okay, let's go on. The next item is an overview of the fire department operation. Paul Louisi, Fire Chief, presenting. Paul?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we will review fire department operations, and this is our council requested review. I would ask you to refrain from any conversation or questions pertaining to our ambulance, upcoming ambulance service, or our CON application, just because of the pending legal process that we're entering. So tonight, overview of the fire department operations. We'll also just briefly do a reminder about automatic aid, as well as fire service delivery from our stations. our growth areas, and then obviously we'll have time for questions after that. So just as a quick update, in October of 2020, we became fully staffed in our fire prevention division, which was really exciting. That had been built up over the last 7 or 8 years, and so it was exciting for that to be able to happen. And then right now they're averaging about 300 inspections a month, and they did have a month in June where they completed over 700 inspections. Also, as part of that division is our community risk reduction or our community educators. So they've been staying very creative during COVID. Even though schools have been impacted by COVID, they've come up with a lot of new programs for the schools that are virtual, and they're getting out there and helping out with car seat inspections to really ensure our littlest ones of our community are protected as much as possible. So as a review of the automatic gate system, it is a consortium that is formed through an IGA, so or joined through an IGA. The participants agree to operate and act almost as one single entity response agency. And really what we do is we respond our closest, most appropriate fire apparatus to any emergency that they're called to, regardless really of jurisdictional boundaries. So the automatic aid system, which is really just consistent with the Metro Phoenix area, really it does erase those jurisdictional boundaries. So again, if the call is closest to an Avondale unit and it happens to be in the city of Goodyear, then that unit would respond into our city because again, closest, most appropriate unit. It does provide for centralized dispatch. So we're in the system, we're all dispatched out of 1 or 2 dispatch centers, so either Phoenix or Mesa. It does standardize our staffing and the communications, ensures customers receive the highest level of care at all times, and allows the participating agencies to better use their resources within their own city. So here's a look from 2020 of auto aid that is coming into Goodyear, so that's on your left-hand side, and then auto aid from Goodyear, so the amount of times we respond to another city. So as you can see, for example, Avondale, they responded into the city 1,277 times, and we responded from Goodyear into Avondale 491 times. So you can see those numbers as they kind of trend down. With regards to Glendale, most of those calls are to the Luke Air Force Base, so that we help cover. And then as you can see, as we start to open our newer stations, which we'll talk about in a little bit, you can see those numbers starting to come down and starting to equalize. The numbers in 2020 do really represent the Fire Station 181, the old Fire Station 181 at Litchfield and Yuma being closed and Avondale picking up a lot of those calls for us. So you can see as we go into 2021, that those calls are starting to stabilize a little bit more. And Buckeye Valley does have a big number that come into our city. Their closest station is really located right at our border at Perryville and Indian School, just north of that intersection. So they do handle a lot of those calls in our northwest portion of our city. So if you looked at the auto aid as a big system, again, we have 2 regional dispatch centers, Phoenix and Mesa, but there's any given day, there's over 200 engine companies, 36 ladder companies, 42 battalion chiefs, 62 brush trucks, and then about 22 hazmat trucks that are available at any point given during the day. And why do we belong to it? Because really it's a model of efficiency, the level of resources that are available to our city at any given moment, the safety aspect of it, and then also the interoperability, which was really a side effect of the 9/11 event. But that even encouraged us even more to become interoperable with any of our cities. So whether it's for fire or even with our PD partners becoming more interoperable. So from a daily staffing standpoint, we have 7 fire stations that are across our city. Each station has 1 vehicle assigned. Obviously, Fire Station 184, which is at Yuma and Saraville, just about has 2. It has the battalion chief and our ladder truck that's stationed out of there. Each vehicle has 4 persons assigned. And this really is to ensure the efficiency that all of our personnel, because all of our personnel are cross-trained as either EMTs or paramedics as well as firefighters. So we have a minimum of 2 paramedics per engine and ladder company every day. On our brush truck out of 187, we do have 1 paramedic that's staffed on that every day. Really, the best practice for us is a captain and an engineer and 2 firefighters. And 3 shifts cover the 365 days. So we have A, B, and C shift. So you can see here from our types of incidents. So this is from fiscal year 21. We responded to just a little bit over 9,400 calls for service. And as I've told you in the past, the majority of our calls for service are emergency medical calls related. So about 73%. And then you can see the breakdown of those other calls. The service calls is more of a catch-all. So they can be anything from a lockout to a water problem to snake removal to check bees to illegal burning. So it's more of a catch-all for us. So Fire Station 181 opened in May of 2021. It is the original fire station was at Litchfield and Yuma, and that was built in 1994. It primarily serves east and central Goodyear. It currently has the engine and hazmat team out of there, 181. It does have 4-person staffing, and then eventually this will be where our crisis response or our community response team responds out of. So, and as you can see, this is a really interesting graph. So from May of when we opened that station in 2021, the call volume versus the calls that Avondale has been doing for us. So they're the engine 171, so they're the red bar, we're the blue bar. And as you can see in May, our call volume shot right up when we opened the doors, and Avondale's calls continued to kind of drop, so which is exactly what we want to see. This I thought was the most interesting. So this is really the balancing of calls that has occurred since May. So what I did was I picked some of our busiest units, 181, 183, 184, and engine 185. You can see those calls kind of balance out as Fire Station 181 opens up in May. So, you know, I think from a placement standpoint, it's certainly in a good spot. Our resource management or support services function does function out of the original Fire Station 181. We will be putting in a CIP request to help replace that aging building, and that will be put in this fall. There's always the potential for us to use the land that's behind the new Fire Station 181. We have plenty of land on that site. So 182, that opened in 2002, 2003. Primarily serves northern Estrella Mountain. Located at that station is an engine 182 and also brush truck 182. They are co-staffed, so those out of those 4-person that's staffing that, they can take either of those vehicles or both if they have to. Fire Station 183 opened in 2000, so that's located at the community park. Serves primarily the Northeast Goodyear and Litchfield Park. It also provides the auto aid over to Luke Air Force Base. Engine 183 is out of there, and they have 4-person staffing. Fire Station 184, located at Yuma and Saraville, that opened in 2004. Ladder 184 and the battalion chief are out of there. So the ladder and BC both provide citywide coverage, but for the most part, the ladder covers west and central Goodyear. And again, has 4-person staffing plus the 2 that are assigned to the battalion chief. Fire Station 185 opened in 2008. Primarily serves the northwest portion of Goodyear, so that's located at Pebble Creek and Clubhouse. So currently has engine and hazmat 185, although when Fire Station 188 opens, that hazmat team will move to 188 and we'll leave an engine behind. But that does have 4-person staffing at that station as well. And then Fire Station 186 opened up in January of this year. Primarily serves Southern Australia Mountain. And right now we have engine 186 in the Type 3 engine that is located there. So that's a large brush truck but it looks like a fire engine. So we do send that a lot of times out on our wildland deployments to other states or even within our own state. But they do house that right now at Fire Station 186. And that does have 4-person staffing. And then Fire Station 187, that opened up in 2007, primarily serves the Mobile community. This station is a double-wide trailer, so it's not our typical fire station design. So right now we're staffing that with a brush truck, and that's 2-person staffing. So typically a captain and then a firefighter, and one of those is a paramedic. So just looking at call types down in where we respond to at 187. So as you can see, a majority of our calls are outside of our city as part of the automatic aid. So we do have an auto aid agreement with the city of Maricopa. So a vast majority of our calls go to Maricopa. And then Gila Bend in the county areas, about 6% of our call volume, those are mutual aid agreements that we have with those agencies. And then 33% of our calls are within the city of Goodyear themselves. And then from a call type standpoint, so fire and EMS, and obviously have a lot of service calls there for whatever particular reason. In the past, when we've looked at these, we've had more fire calls than we've had anything else. So just kind of a given time. But this is over the last 3 years, so from fiscal year 18 to 21. And then calls by time of day. So, pretty consistent over the last several years, although this is a 3-year look at this. But this has been over the last several years that this call volume and time of day call volume has been like this. And then Fire Station 188. So we're in the design process for Fire Station 188. That it is scheduled to open by mid-2023, so we're open for July of 23. Obviously, as you know and have approved, we will be combining that with a PD substation. So that eventually will house engine and hazmat 188. So here's a map just looking at all of our stations as they sit in our cities. And again, coverage is certainly improved since we've opened up 181 and Fire Station 186, and we're hoping to see that coverage and balancing of calls improve as we open up Fire Station 188 as well. So here's just a general overview look of our calls for service, for fiscal year 21. But it also, I have it in a graph format for you as well. So you can see Fire Station 184 is one of our busier stations with just a little bit over 3,400 calls. But we'll see a balancing of that occur when 188 opens, and also when we have a full year of Fire Station 181. We'll see some of that balancing occur between 1 and 184. And I also did, you can see the gray bar that sits above 181 in Fire Station 186, just projecting out what a whole year's volume would look like for them. And then we also did our response times. So our goal with this would be 5 minutes. So that would just be slightly below where our response times are now. But that's kind of laid out by station. Obviously, Fire Station 187 is a significant increase, but that's really because of the distance that they travel for their calls. So our growth areas, I'm showing you a map here. So the way we define our West Goodyear growth area is from I-10 south to Broadway. The western portion of that is Perryville, and then the eastern portion is Cotton. So with some of the data that we're looking at right now, 184, Fire Station 184, which is at Saraville, and Yuma responds out to a majority of those calls. And they have an average response time of about 7 minutes and 45 seconds. So about 38% of the calls are more than 8 minutes. The area is anywhere between 2 and 5 miles from the nearest station. So just from a call volume standpoint, just specifically to that area, in 2015, we saw about 386 calls, and now that's increased about 30% to 558 calls in calendar year 2020. So we're definitely seeing a lot of increased call volume specific to that area. And then so for us right now, some of our next steps, we are looking at another fire station location study that was approved in last year's supplemental budget. Our current one, believe it or not, is actually 5 years old at this point. So it's hard to believe. In the 3 stations that they called out in that study, the last one would be completed when we finish Fire Station 188. And we're certainly in that study looking at the next 3 to 5 years, but we're also thinking about our long-term needs as well. So long-term planning will go along with that piece as well. And that's the end of my presentation. So if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Chief. Questions? Councilman Fazil.
Thanks, great presentation. I had a question. When you go back to one of your slides, the one that shows the breakdown of the EMS, et cetera, in your 187.
At 187?
Yeah. Now, I noticed, I understand because of the distance, that one seems to be way off the chart as far as the times getting there. But you got 33% EMS. I'm just wondering from the standpoint of staffing that you have down there. I recall when I did my MBA, and time is critical when you're dealing with medical emergency.
Correct.
From your staff, and you got 2 people down there. Okay. Yes. And how is that affecting the actual working conditions and the ability to serve when you're dealing with EMS, when you have 2 people, where it's my understanding you kind of need 4 to work when you have medical emergencies? And has there been anything down there that has kind of brought to the attention that could be a little bit, I wouldn't say dangerous, but a little bit challenging for staff under those conditions?
Yeah, there certainly is. I mean, 2-person staffing is different than what we're doing here in Central Goodyear, right? So the service is different. The members that work down there are dedicated to providing the highest level of service that they can to the citizens. Certainly, as you have more critical calls, that becomes a challenge with 2 people, because now we're used to delegating those skills to 4 people, 2 of those being paramedics. Now 1 person's a medic, trying to get all of those skills done and trying to take care of the patient to the best of their ability. So it certainly is challenging in those environments. I think we've seen a lot of recent studies that have been done by several different agencies, including NIST, which is the National Institute of Scientific Technology. Science and Technology, they have looked at, best case scenarios for crew staffing and critical patients. So they say that, 4 is the ideal crew staffing for critical patients. So again, I think it can be challenging for 2 people when they have really sick patients.
No, the only reason I ask is when I did my thing with my MBA, I realized how critical is time, and also remember staffing, and at 33% starting to move over into the fire. And not only that, you can't send 2 guys into a fire if you have a fire down there.
Right.
So that to me makes it a little more dangerous, to the crew itself. So I realize that it's a long distance from here, Mobile area, but at the same time, I want to make sure we're taking care and we're not putting people in harm's way as a result of that. So just some thoughts when I see that 33% there. Okay. And even the fire at 55. So.
Yeah.
Brandon? Hello, Brandon? Yes. Molly, go ahead.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions, Chief.
Okay.
So I noticed that on some of the fire stations, you indicated that there would also be a hazmat truck.
Yes.
Do we need to, or will we be purchasing additional trucks, or are we just moving
No,
one truck around?
That's our current configuration that we have from a vehicle standpoint. For Fire Station 188, we're in the middle of purchasing that engine right now. So that will be here well ahead of when the station opens. So we have,
So we'll have 2 hazmat trucks, or 3?
we currently have 2 hazmat
We'll have
trucks.
3 then?
No.
Oh,
we'll
just
only-
the 2?
Just
Okay,
the 2.
great, thank
yes.
you. My next question is, so for the design, you said we were in the process of designing another fire station.
Fire Station 188, yes.
Why do we not use the design that we did for the new 181? Because it is just the best there is, I think.
So we will use a lot of those concepts from Fire Station 181. We have a new architect that we'll be working with for Fire Station 188. So construction company will be the same. Unfortunately, the architect will be different. So they will have to draw and design the station themselves. So, but they did a tour of Fire Station 181 last week. Spent a few hours with the crews talking to them about the best components of that station. So we will maintain a lot of those components as we transition over to the new design team.
Okay, appreciate them talking to the crews because
Yes.
they're the ones that live in the building and they know what works and what doesn't work. And my concern with Fire Station 187 is I send you an email every time you send out something that's terrible that's happened down there. And I worry about our crew, their safety, because with the brush truck, you can't even really block the road. And the way that 238 is, it's up and down and up and down.
Yeah.
And if the wreck is down in the bottom, you put the truck at the top. I mean, how do we keep our employees, our firemen safe? And that's been a real worry for me. And also, just the thought that if you have 2 or 3 patients and you've only got 2 people down there, they can't, how do they make a decision? We can't help this one. I mean, it's got to really play on their mental health because they know they can't do what they're trained to do. And we really need to address that. And I've already had conversation with the city manager on this. And so it's not something that's coming out of left field, but we really need to think about that. And I'm not sure that a brush truck is the right vehicle down there because when the floods came, our crews couldn't even get out to go help. They couldn't get to Gila Bend because we didn't have a truck to get them out of where they were, so they were marooned. So if we needed to go rescue someone around the Mobile School or down on 183rd or on the other road to the right, we couldn't get to them. So we're no good. I think we need to reevaluate what we provide down there and make it right, make it work. If we're going to take care of those people down there, we need to do it the right way.
Thank you.
Sherry?
Thank you very much for the update. I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate the fact I know the community up in Estrella is very happy with the new station up there because it does, and I'm sure we'll see those times go down as it's open for a whole year. So I think that really does help. I have 2 questions really. First of all, someone asked me this question. I know we do the Litchfield Park service, but county islands, how are those served? Are they just part of mutual aid or?
So Rural Metro serves those, but there are times when they don't have enough coverage for that area or they're on another call and they will call through the Phoenix alarm room and then Phoenix will assign the closest, most appropriate unit to that call. So it's a challenge across the valley for those county islands that aren't covered or don't have great response times. So each agency is kind of working to try to provide the best service for those areas, but it's certainly challenging in those areas.
And I don't know why don't they belong to the automatic gate system?
Yeah, it goes back.
I
a
just opened a
long
can of
time.
worms.
And the conversation just came back up recently, and there's some things from a training perspective that they need to improve upon, as well as their staffing, and so they have not gotten to that point yet. So
Okay. Got it. And then the other question is also with 187, because that one, I hate to say, I don't want to say we forget about it, but sometimes it's not the foremost if you're not passing it and you're just not seeing the trucks go down there. But I know that area is growing. I know there's with the boom that's going on, that area through Australia is going to keep going down there. Is that something, I don't know if you know or the city manager knows, that when we have those development agreements like we did with Australia, is that something that's still in the developmental agreement for that area, or has that expired, or can we make sure we put it in so that whoever develops that area, we can put the proper services there as it develops?
Yeah, I can just speak in general. When we have, say, a Rainbow Valley or someone comes in, it's absolutely part of that development agreement process is to look at the public safety services.
Okay, yeah, because I want to make sure that when that develops and as Estrella develops, that's part of the plan that we continue. I don't think any of us want to be behind the 8 ball again, like we had to build 3 stations like really quick because we had gotten so far behind with the growth. So I do fully support getting a new plan and kind of relooking, and I hope the plan, that would be one I'd want to look at, is like, how can we plan before the houses come? What's the plan to get ahead of the growth? So I think you and the whole department does a great job, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as a council person, you could reach out when they come to talk to you and say, where's the fire station going to be? I did it, so I know you can do it. When they come, I will. Yeah. Laura?
I want to thank you, Chief, for this operational overview. Very interesting, and interesting to see how much Avondale supported us during the time that we were under construction, and certainly appreciate that. As we were talking about Station 187, I was thinking about a recent email that you had sent about an accident along the highway, and I think our guys were out there by themselves for a substantially long period of time in a truck, and that does raise concerns about their safety and well-being, out on the highway waiting for somebody else to come to help. So I know you've heard a lot of comments tonight about that, and so I think that's something that there is interest in evaluating to ensure staff safety. I was just curious also about training, and I know this was operational, but just if you could give a quick summary about your training objectives for the year, or what you guys have been working on. I know it's been a heck of a time with COVID and all, but and I know that training involves when you're staffed with 4 people on a truck and trying to get training and how you coordinate that overtime and things like that. So I was just curious if you could speak on that a moment.
Yeah, the shout out to our training division. I mean, there's 2 people assigned to that, but routinely year after year, they put over 20,000 hours of training out for us. And whether that's computer-based training or, EMS training, hazmat training, or just, our engine company standards training that they assist with, or at least get out. But also kudos to the crews in the field to get that training done throughout their days. We look for all sorts of opportunities. I think what's interesting about the 2 news stations is they each have training towers in them, and they've been utilized quite a bit. We've been hearing some great feedback from the crews about their use, their ability to be able to stay at their station in their first due and still provide for some effective training for them. So, there's a myriad of different things that they'll do, from building familiarity to, reviewing streets. I mean, just any number of things that the captains can come up with to ensure that the crews are at their highest level of training. So,
thank you.
Bill?
Thanks for the presentation. You highlighted a few things that were kind of throughout. So I don't have questions in one area. I've got questions in all the areas.
Okay.
More for, I think, the benefit of the rest of the council and everyone else. I noticed all the statistics and whatnot we saw through the presentation are all related to calls in Goodyear. We didn't get any feedback on what we're doing in Litchfield Park, call volume.
Okay.
which is fine.
Yeah, we do.
Because this is Goodyear. But
Yeah, we average about 2 calls per day in Litchfield Park, and that's actually what our thought was going into the program. Previously, Rural Metro had served Litchfield Park, and so they didn't really provide any data. So we just assumed, kind of based on the area, what our call volume would be, and it's held pretty steady to about 2 calls per day. They have a higher incident percentage-wise of EMS calls. They're about 82 to 84% any given month. And they have 2 care homes that keep us pretty busy in Litchfield Park. So we are frequently talking to the management staff to ensure that they're using the 911 system to the most efficient and effective process. So they've been really very, very receptive. I think, everybody's kind of going through some challenges with COVID and making sure that their residents receive the best level of care that they can.
And there was legislation passed this year that required care homes to provide now a different level of initial care. Is that not correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It doesn't go into effect until the end of September, but it is specific to group homes and care homes. It is not specific to independent living. So you can still be in a facility, but be on the independent side, and it's almost like an apartment. So if you have fall injuries that happen frequently to that person, there's really nothing from the law's perspective that we can do. But on the other side, on the assisted living, so the group homes or the specialty nursing facilities, there is a mechanism for us to be able to work with them to ensure that if there is a minor fall injury, that they're able to assist that person back up without having to use the 911 system. So we've actually reached out to their association within the last 4 weeks to provide an education overview for them to ensure that all of their facilities are up to speed on that new law.
So in, I think, future presentations, it may be helpful for us to understand what kind of call volumes those are generating, because we, as recently as within the last month or so, just approved a senior living apartment complex that has an assisted component, blah, blah, blah. So I think every time we do that, there's a component of that we probably need to be educated about as we get ready to move through it. So,
of interest, we've been tracking those numbers for a while. We on a quarterly basis, we do fire department stats, and it's a review by all the senior staff of their business, what's going on in operations, what's going on in training, and what's going on in logistics. But part of that is we do follow the senior living calls for service. So we probably have that for the last 8 years. We have that kind of volume. So we should be able to provide that for you guys.
Yeah, I think just generically. So my next question is in the automatic aid kind of category. You showed the slide with the number of calls into Glendale and mentioned that a lot of those are going to Luke, which is fine. But as Glendale now is annexing a tremendous amount of property along the 303, which puts our fire stations in close proximity to that, I think it's kind of incumbent upon us to start asking the question, how do the provisions of the automatic aid agreement protect us in those annexations? Because if there's no incentive for Glendale to build a fire station, clearly they annexed all the way out to Luke, and now somebody else has to provide service out there.
Right.
It's going to get even worse when we go the other side of Luke with our fire station. So how are we protected as a community?
So certainly the development that's occurring with Glendale is now on the other side of Luke, and so it essentially sits between Fire Station 185 and a surprise fire station. We're on the north and south end of that, so we're right in the middle. Essentially responding right to the middle of where Glendale has annexed. We're having active conversations with their fire chief and his senior staff. They are working towards a solution, but the way the automatic aid agreement reads is if it is their annexation and is growing more than 5 miles from their city, then they need to provide that service. So we are reminding that piece, that piece of the agreement, and ensuring that they're holding up their end of the bargain. So thankful for our city manager. She's been having ongoing conversations with their city as well. So kind of feeling pressure from all sides at this point to ensure that they are providing that level of protection and that they're supposed to.
Yeah, I think we probably need to stay on top of that collectively as a council. I know you guys are as staff, but I think council needs to be kind of kept in the loop on that. And then we talked about, in regards to automatic aid, we talked about county islands and whatnot. We had a long practice in the past of billing rural metro for calls into there. Right. Are we still doing that?
Yes.
And are we collecting?
Yes.
We are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They were absent for a little bit, but we were able to collect on that. And we recently had an invoice that was sent to them, and it was delayed coming back to us. So I had to reach out they do have a new fire chief that's in Arizona. So I was able to reach out to him, have a conversation, and he got the invoice processed for us pretty quickly. So they've been a little bit more responsive than they have in the past.
Yeah, and I think that it's important for our residents to understand that we aren't providing free services to those that live in the county, and that was part of the issue with why rural metro isn't part of it. Is they're a for-profit company and we are public funded. Are we providing gifts, to Councilmember Pizzillo's point? Are we giving away our services to this private entity? So that was part of the past discussion regarding the northwestern corner of the city, getting to that Glendale piece. Do we still have the land for a fire station right outside Sedea?
Yes, Citrus and Indian School.
And now that we're seeing a lot more commercial development out there, plus the folks that are living there, I'm sure when we look at that, Buckeye Valley is probably providing a lot of response to that area. Yeah. But to my point of let's not let Glendale take advantage of us. Let's make sure we're not taking advantage of the Buckeye Valley Fire District in that regard. So
yeah, and as you probably remember, there's been a lot of conversation about that station moving a little further north, but that's been going on for a little bit at a time now. So I'm going to circle back with the Buckeye Valley Fire Chief actually this Thursday, and we'll have that conversation again about what their plans are, and then certainly we can share our station planning with them as that moves along.
Yeah, I think as we get ready to see the industrial explosion that's going to occur out there, we probably need to be, I'm guessing that's probably the next one that we need to talk about construction.
We're anticipating, yes.
And then I've got two finals. We've had a lot of discussion about 187, but the majority of the calls are outside of our city down there, and we're already stretched as it is. I'm just going to say that. Can we geofence 187 into our city limits?
I mean, that wouldn't be helpful from an auto aid standpoint. We do rely on Maricopa quite a bit to come into our city when we have something bad going on. They get added on to a lot of our calls. So I think that would hurt us more than it would help us in that standpoint. I've had the conversation with the leadership from Phoenix Fire about that it is a brush truck. It's a two-person brush truck. So they do understand that, but there also is the sense that they would like us to see us try to gradually improve that service down there and provide the same level of service that others get. So
I guess that'd be a conversation for another day. And then my final question, which I was kind of surprised to hear tonight, is we have a new architect for 188.
Correct.
I thought the plan was same architect, 3 fire stations, get it all done. What happened?
So the way the original RFP was written was for just the 2 stations, 186 and 181. In in the posting, it contemplated that a third station would be or could be built. And so when we completed 181, when we were getting ready to move on to 188, it was decided that it was best to go back out for RFP and see if we could get more value for the dollars that we're spending for our fire stations. So in that competitive process, our original architect, DFDG, did not bid with Core Construction, or Core did not bid with DFDG. So we had some different players that presented themselves in that process, that competitive process, and who ultimately won was Perlman and Core Construction. So they teamed up for this station.
So I appreciate that explanation. I would like to see an analysis of the cost per square feet from the construction of 181 versus the construction of 188. I realize they're slightly different, but cost per square foot. I was always under the impression that we were getting 3. I think that was to Councilmember Campbell's point. I thought we were doing 3. Why aren't they all the same? We have 2 different buildings. One's a 2-bay, one's a 3-bay. So, I get there's idiosyncrasies with each one of them. But to find that we've gone out for yet a third one is kind of surprising. And these things have gone up tremendously in cost. So I just would like to see an eventual analysis. It doesn't have to be this week, but sooner or later.
Okay.
And that's it.
Well, they were good questions. Any other? You have one more. I knew I
I'm
could
sorry,
see
I
that.
have one more. So Chief, this is probably way out in left field. Do you know that Litchfield Park is planning to build a roundabout on Litchfield Road? Is our fire truck going to be able to navigate that roundabout to get into their city hall if they have a fire? And do you service the homes to the left across the street on
The Cache homes?
Village? Yeah, do you do those as well?
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that we can get over to them.
Yes.
So,
Yep. Yeah, it would still have to be built to fire code, the roads. So, yeah, that would ensure that our fire truck would be able to transverse those
okay.
areas.
Have you been in conversation with them?
Yes. we
Okay,
have been.
thank you. And my last comment is I neglected to thank, in fact, every station with the exception of Mobile, and I don't think Estrella, but every other station responded at some time in the last 3 years to my home, and every call was so professionally handled. And I just want to thank everyone for their wonderful service. And I have never heard a disparaging word about any fire call in our city that I personally know. And I know our city benefits from our firemen being so well-trained.
Yes.
And so community tuned to us. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Much like Wally, I really appreciate everybody did, the things they did for my husband. But, I live in the reserve, and so you come there quite often. I can't tell you how much they admire that service. And because of that, it just raises Goodyear. And so I want to thank you because it's not always easy maneuvering around. And sometimes they get a little argumentative. They don't want to go. And so we spend time saying, well, you have to go. So I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, council, we come to the end. Does council have any comments, commendation, reports, current events? Does the city manager have anything to report? Well, great. It's 6:49, so I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and we're all going to go home.